Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving into a story that touches the soul, a journey filled with resilience, unexpected connections, and the magic of true kindness. Imagine a young waiter who, after a long day, meets a young girl in need at his restaurant's door. That encounter sets off a powerful tale of life stories, emotional journeys, and overcoming challenges. It's a story about what happens when life-changing moments bring us face to face with the true meaning of compassion. If you're drawn to inspiring life lessons and stories that touch on real people's lives or turning points, this is one story you'll want to stay for until the very end. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment below where you're watching from, and if you're ready for more, hit the notification bell so you're the first to see stories like these. It was a cold night in Nashville, and Ethan, a dedicated young waiter, was about to finish his shift at a local restaurant. But who could have imagined that a simple act of compassion would change the course of their lives forever? Looking out the window, he spotted a mysterious girl, barefoot and alone, who seemed lost in her thoughts. What could have brought that young woman to the sidewalk, with nowhere to go? Driven by an impulse of solidarity, Ethan decided to invite her inside, offering a warm meal in exchange for a song. When Ellie began to sing, the beauty of her voice enveloped everyone present, revealing the pain and resilience she carried within. He realized in that magical moment that this encounter could be transformative for both of them. However, this connection was abruptly interrupted by the arrival of Mr. Jackson, the strict owner of the restaurant, who clearly disapproved of Ellie's presence. Torn between obedience and empathy, Ethan made a bold decision. He stood up for Ellie, challenging Mr. Jackson's authority and quitting his job. With the support of his friend Sarah, who also saw Ellie's potential, they helped her perform elsewhere, where she began to win over the audience, revealing her true strength and talent. As Ellie's popularity grew, the challenges intensified. The pressure to perform constantly and the unresolved traumas weighed heavily on her, while Ethan struggled financially, feeling torn between his own needs and his commitment to Ellie. The conflict reached its peak when a figure from Ellie's past, her mother who had gone missing, showed up at the restaurant looking for her. This reunion brought forth emotional revelations that even Mr. Jackson could not ignore, leading him to reassess his priorities and recognize the true value of human connections. In the emotional conclusion of the story, Ethan, Ellie, and her mother form a new family, united by forgiveness and the strength of second chances. Ethan reflects on how these moments changed his perspective on life, realizing that true belonging often comes from the people we choose to protect and love. The tale ends with an inspiring message about the power of empathy and the courage to embrace the unknown, reminding everyone that each act of kindness can profoundly impact not just one life, but many. The atmosphere in the restaurant was tense after Ethan's departure. He had made an impulsive decision defending Ellie, but now he wondered if he had done the right thing. With bills piling up and the job he had left behind, the financial pressure began to weigh on his shoulders. The small savings he had put together to buy a new guitar, his dream of playing in a band, now seemed distant. Meanwhile, Ellie was on an emotional roller coaster. Music had been her salvation, but fame was bringing old ghosts to the surface. The performances were becoming more frequent, and although the audience adored her, she felt the weight of every note she sang. The fear of failure accompanied her, and her insecurity grew as the pressure mounted. She remembered difficult days when loneliness and sadness were her only companions. And now, when she finally had the chance to shine, the fear of repeating the past paralyzed her. Sarah, Ethan's loyal friend, was also facing her own dilemmas. She had always believed in Ellie's talent, but her concern for Ethan's well-being was growing. Sarah knew he was struggling to stay afloat, and their friendship was beginning to be tested. She wanted to help Ellie, but she also didn't want to see Ethan succumb to the pressure of a new world he hardly knew. The tension between the two friends began to increase, creating a space of conflict that threatened the bond they had always shared. One day, as Ellie prepared for a performance at a new venue, Ethan noticed she was restless. He approached her, trying to offer support, but Ellie was distant. "You don't understand, Ethan. If I fail, all of this could end. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, she said, her eyes filled with tears. He wanted to comfort her, but his own insecurities held him back. You're stronger than you think, Ellie. I'm here with you, he replied. But the words sounded empty, as if he were trying to convince himself of them. The following weeks were a test for both of them. The stress of the performances affected Ellie's emotional health, and she began to withdraw, seeking solace in unhealthy places. Ethan, in turn, started working at a new job in a cafe, but the exhausting routine and distance from his old life left him discouraged. Their friendship began to wane, and the connection they had built seemed to crumble. The encouraging messages they used to exchange were replaced by awkward silences. When Ellie received a recording offer from a label, the pressure increased exponentially. She knew this was a unique opportunity, but it was also a constant reminder that success came at a cost. The label demanded she change her style, which left her distressed. Doubt consumed her. Should she follow her heart or adapt to others' expectations? The decision felt unbearable, and each passing day grew heavier. Ethan, noticing the change in Ellie, decided to confront her. You don't need to change to please anyone. Your authenticity is what captivates people, he said, trying to rekindle the spark that once united them. But Ellie, overwhelmed by the pressure, replied, "What if that's not enough? What if I fail again?" That question echoed in Ethan's mind, making him reflect on his own insecurities. He realized he was also afraid of failing, of not being the friend Ellie needed. At that moment, Ellie's figure from the past made an unexpected entrance. Her mother, who had disappeared years ago, showed up at the cafe where Ethan worked. The reunion between mother and daughter was filled with emotions, but also resentments. Ellie was torn between the joy of seeing her mother and the pain of everything she had lost. Ethan, watching from afar, felt the weight of the situation. He knew that this reunion could be the key to Ellie's healing, but he also feared it could separate them even more. Ethan's dilemma intensified. He wanted to support Ellie, but his mother's presence brought forth issues he didn't know how to handle. Was it possible to build a future alongside someone who was fighting their own demons? With their friendship tested and emotions running high, Ethan realized he would need to find his own inner strength to help Ellie face her fears and insecurities. And so, he began to question not only what it meant to be a friend, but what it truly meant to be strong. Ethan watched the scene with a knot in his stomach. The expression on Ellie's face was a mix of joy and pain as she faced the mother who had left her life so long ago. Her presence brought forth memories Ellie had tried to bury, and Ethan felt helpless, as if he were watching a tragic movie without being able to intervene. The words of comfort he had prepared dissipated, and he wondered if he could be the support Ellie needed during this delicate moment. As the conversation between mother and daughter unfolded, Ethan noticed that Ellie was closing off. He realized that the initial joy quickly transformed into a storm of emotions. Ellie's mother, although visibly emotional, couldn't understand how much her absence had impacted her daughter's life. Memories of past arguments and the pain of betrayal mingled with the hope of a future that, for Ellie, seemed increasingly uncertain. Outside, Sarah watched the scene with concern. She knew that Ellie's mother's presence could be a turning point, but she also feared it would intensify the emotional turmoil that already existed. Sarah tried to approach Ethan, but he was so engrossed in the situation that he didn't notice his friend beside him. "Ethan, you need to go to her. She needs you now more than ever," Sarah said, her voice filled with urgency. But Ethan hesitated. The fear of saying something wrong paralyzed him. Meanwhile, Ellie struggled internally. The joy of seeing her mother was mixed with the anguish of all the unhealed wounds. "You left me. How can you just show up now?" Her voice was heavy with pain and anger, and each word felt like a blow. Ellie's mother tried to explain, but the daughter was determined not to listen. What should have been an emotional reunion turned into a painful confrontation, and the room was filled with a silence heavy with tension. Ethan didn't know how to act. He wanted to run to Ellie, hug her, and remind her that she wasn't alone. but the fear of what could happen kept him at a distance. The weight of his own insecurities grew, and frustration began to turn into despair. He felt that with each passing minute, their friendship was drifting further apart, and the thought of losing Ellie left him distressed. The situation worsened when, after the conversation, Ellie left the cafe without looking back. Ethan tried to follow her, but his body felt glued to the ground. At the same time, Sarah approached Ellie's mother, trying to understand what had happened. "She needs time." "This reunion was difficult for her," Sarah said, her voice calm but filled with concern. Ellie's mother, with tears in her eyes, replied, "I just wanted to fix things. I was a terrible mother." The pressure on Ellie was mounting. The record label's proposal was still on her mind, but now she felt more lost than ever. The idea of moving forward seemed like a heavy burden, and she wondered if she could handle all of this on her own. Doubts consumed her as she walked through the city streets, each step echoing in her mind. That night, while Ethan worked at the cafe, his thoughts were far away. He couldn't shake the image of Ellie from his mind, and the feeling of helplessness engulfed him. He decided he needed to talk to her, needed her to know he was there, even if the situation seemed to be collapsing. But when he tried to call her, the call went straight to voicemail. Despair hit him like a wave, and he felt as if he were losing something precious. The connection between them was breaking, and silences became more frequent. Each was dealing with their own struggles, but the absence of one another was becoming an unbearable void. Ellie, in her quest for answers and validation, began to distance herself from friends who had once been her support, while Ethan spiraled into a cycle of insecurities and doubts. The friendship that had once been solid was at risk. Both were trapped in their own battles, and each seemed to be drifting away from what mattered most. The emotional tension was rising, and the possibility of a fresh start felt increasingly distant. The choice to pursue their dreams or to get lost in their fears was becoming an unbearable dilemma, and the line between success and failure seemed thinner than ever. The night slowly descended over the city, and the streetlights began to glow on the sidewalks. Ellie walked aimlessly, her emotions heightened. The pain of reuniting with her mother still throbbed in her chest, as her memories intertwined in a tangle of contradictory feelings. The need for answers consumed her, but anger and hurt prevented her from seeking understanding. The butterflies in her stomach intensified, and each step felt heavier than the last. Meanwhile, Ethan, still at the cafe, decided he could no longer remain still. He felt that time was running out and that he needed to do something before it was too late. With his heart racing, he grabbed his jacket and ran toward Ellie's apartment. Urgency guided him, and he knew he couldn't let her face her pain alone. He needed her to know that he cared. When he arrived at the building, Ethan hesitated for a moment. The fear of rejection paralyzed him, but the image of Ellie crying motivated him to move forward. He quickly climbed the stairs and, upon reaching her door, knocked firmly but gently. The silence that followed was deafening, and uncertainty flooded his heart. After a few seconds that felt like hours, the door slowly opened. Ellie was there, with red eyes and a pale face. At first, she seemed surprised to see Ethan, but her expression soon shifted to something closer to anger. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was heavy with emotion, and Ethan felt his stomach churn. I just wanted to know how you are," he said, trying to remain calm. "I saw what happened at the cafe and got worried." She took a deep breath, trying to control the emotions that were about to spill over. "Worried? Since when do you care? Where were you when I needed you the most?" Her words were like daggers, and Ethan felt each one. "I have been here, Ellie. I've always been here, but you didn't let me in. I didn't know how to help," he said, frustration mixing with pain in his voice. "Please, let me help you now." Ellie's gaze softened for a moment, but was quickly replaced by the memory of the pain that visited her. She hesitated, but something inside her made her open the door a little more. "Come in." As soon as Ethan entered, the tension in the air was palpable. Ellie turned away, crossing her arms as if protecting herself from any attempted comfort. "I don't know what to do, Ethan. I don't know if I can forgive my mother. She just showed up as if nothing had happened. I'm so confused." Ethan watched her, realizing that her confusion wasn't just about her mother. It was also about her own dreams and insecurities. "Sometimes people fail. I failed to be there for you, and I'm really sorry for that. But Ellie, you don't have to go through this alone. You have to face it. You have to decide what's best for you." Tears began to slip down Ellie's face, and the emotional pressure seemed to be building. "I don't want to feel this pain anymore. I just want to be happy and move on, but I don't know how to do that." Ethan stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Maybe happiness isn't something you find, but something you build. Forgiving might be the first step, not just for your mother, but for yourself. Letting go of the weight of pain can open up space for new things." Those words echoed in Ellie's mind. She realized that the pain she carried wasn't just about her mother, but about herself. The truth was that she had imprisoned herself in her own emotions and fears. What followed was an unexpected revelation. Happiness wasn't a destination, but a journey that required courage to face the past and open herself to the future. Ethan watched her as the emotions unfolded on her face. He knew this was the opportunity they both needed. "I'm here, Ellie. I always will be. You don't have to go through this alone." The tension in the room began to dissipate, and Ellie felt that, for the first time, there was a path ahead. The tears that were once of pain were now of relief. She took a deep breath, feeling that despite the confusion, there was light at the end of the tunnel. The reunion with her mother could be a chance for healing, not just for them, but also for herself. Ethan smiled, relieved to see the change in Ellie's expression. The journey would be long and full of challenges, but now, together, they would have the strength needed to face whatever came next. Ellie finally realized that, no matter how difficult it was, she had the power to shape her own story. Ellie felt as if a curtain had been pulled back, revealing a world that had previously seemed dark and hopeless. Her conversation with Ethan made her realize that, despite all the pain, there was a path forward. But at the same time, the reality of her situation began to impose itself. Dealing with her mother would be a colossal challenge. The anger and hurt were still fresh, like open wounds. After the conversation, Ellie decided she needed some time to gather herself. She stepped away from Ethan, even though he had offered to accompany her. "I need to think," she said, trying to find a space in her mind to process everything. The decision to forgive her mother meant facing a past she would rather leave buried, and that scared her. In the days that followed, Ellie isolated herself a bit. She began writing in a journal, an attempt to organize her thoughts and feelings. The pages quickly filled with outpourings about the pain of abandonment, the confusion of the reunion, and the hesitant hope that was beginning to emerge. But with each word written, new obstacles arose. Memories of past wounds haunted her. In moments of silence, she found herself reliving scenes from the past, the unfulfilled promises, the cold looks from her mother. It was difficult. Ellie also began to feel the pressure of her social life. Friends who had once been close started to notice her absence. Messages and calls piled up on her phone. She wondered how she could explain to everyone what she was going through. But the idea of opening her heart to more people made her nervous. And deep down, there was the fear of rejection, that no one would understand what she was feeling. So, she chose to distance herself, trying to find comfort in solitude. One morning, while walking through the city, Ellie ran into her old friend Lucas. He greeted her with a wide smile but soon noticed her distant expression. "Hey, are you okay? I haven't seen you lately," he said, concern in his voice. Ellie hesitated. Those questions felt like a reminder that life was moving on while she felt stuck in a cycle of pain. "I'm trying," she replied, a bit hesitantly. Lucas watched her closely, as if he could see through her facade. "If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. Sometimes sharing helps." That offer of friendship warmed Ellie's heart, but the idea of opening up to Lucas felt like an insurmountable mountain. "Thank you, Lucas. Really. I just need some time," she said, forcing a smile. He nodded, but Ellie could see the concern in his eyes. As she walked away, the feeling of loneliness enveloped her once again. It was a vicious cycle. The more she distanced herself, the greater the pain became. That night, while looking out the window of her apartment, Ellie reflected on her decision to forgive her mother. The city lights shone like stars, but even those small lights seemed distant. She remembered Ethan's words. Forgiveness can be the first step. But how do you forgive someone who caused so much pain? The doubt consumed her. However, a small impulse led her to call Ethan. He answered quickly. "Hi, Ellie. How are you?" His voice brought a bit of comfort. She took a deep breath. "I'm trying to deal with everything. I thought maybe we could talk more, if you don't mind. Of course, I'm here for you, always. How about we meet tomorrow?" The next day, Ellie met Ethan in a park. The atmosphere was calm and the sun was shining. As she sat on a bench, Ellie felt a mix of relief and anxiety. I'm thinking about meeting my mother, but I don't know if I'm ready," she confessed, looking at the falling leaves around her. Ethan looked at her with understanding. "That's a big step, Ellie. But only you can decide if you're ready. Don't rush it. If you need support, I'll be by your side." His words comforted her, but the pressure of making a decision weighed heavily on her mind. The idea of reuniting with her mother terrified her, but it also excited her. It was as if she were on the brink of a new phase in her life, and this possibility was both frightening and liberating. As they walked, Ellie realized that each step she took alongside Ethan was a step toward healing. She still had a lot of work ahead, but now she had someone by her side, someone who believed in her. The journey was just beginning, and even with new obstacles ahead, Ellie felt that this time she was not alone. Ellie felt like she was on an emotional roller coaster. Each day brought new challenges, and her conversation with Ethan had ignited a light amid the darkness surrounding her. Over the past few weeks, she had faced her insecurities and fears, and now she found herself confronted with the possibility of facing her mother. This thought made her restless, but it also motivated her to seek a growth that seemed long lost. She began to realize that she needed to trust herself more. During the moments she spent writing in her journal, Ellie reflected on the times she had felt powerless. There was power in acknowledging her pain, and by expressing it in words, she felt she was taking ownership of her own story. As she reread her notes, she recognized that even amidst the confusion, there was an emerging strength. It was as if each outpouring was another stone in the construction of a new path. Conversations with Ethan became a safe space where Ellie could vent without fear of judgment. He encouraged her to explore her feelings, and with each meeting, she felt more comfortable opening her heart. It was a stark contrast to the loneliness she had chosen before. Over time, Ellie began to understand that accepting help was not a sign of weakness, but rather a courageous step toward healing. With this new perspective, Ellie decided to take the first step toward reuniting with her mother. Her heart raced with anxiety, but her conversations with Ethan helped her realize that forgiveness was not just about her mother. It was also a way to free herself. She no longer wanted to carry the weight of anger and hurt. She felt that by forgiving, she could finally allow herself to live fully. On the morning of the reunion, Ellie woke up with a mix of nervousness and determination. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she took a deep breath and remembered the lessons she had learned. Life was about new beginnings, and she was ready to face this new chapter. As she approached the agreed-upon place, anticipation enveloped her, but doubt lingered as well. What would she say? How would her mother react? These thoughts haunted her, but Ellie decided she could not let fear dictate her actions. When she saw her mother in the distance, her heart raced. Time had changed them both, but the pain of the past still lingered. With hesitant steps, Ellie moved closer. The exchange of glances was charged with emotions. The silence between them spoke more than words could express. Ellie's mother looked aged and tired, and Ellie realized that behind the figure who had hurt her was a woman fighting her own battles. "Hi," Ellie finally said, her voice trembling. Her mother looked at her, and her eyes filled with tears. "Hi, Ellie. I'm so sorry." The words came as a breath of hope, but Ellie knew she would need more than that. The conversation that followed was difficult, filled with heavy silences and tears. Each word was a step toward forgiveness, but also an acknowledgement of the pain they both had faced. As they spoke, Ellie began to see that her mother also bore scars. The stories that once seemed one-sided now intertwined, forming a more complex picture. She understood that while the pain was real, there was room for empathy. This new wisdom helped her see her mother not just as the source of her hurt, but as a person with her own flaws and regrets. The reunion didn't resolve everything, but it gave Ellie a new perspective on her life. She realized that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but rather freeing herself from the weight that had held her down. By letting go of the hurt, she began to see that success was not just about external achievements, but also about finding inner peace. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Ellie was willing to face it, armed with the lessons she had learned. Over time, her friendship with Ethan deepened. He became a constant support in her journey. Together, they explored new experiences and created memories that helped Ellie heal. Her friendship with Lucas also evolved, and the safe space he provided encouraged her to open up more, allowing others to enter her life. Ellie had learned that life was a mosaic of experiences, and each piece, even the most painful ones, contributed to the beauty of the whole. As she rebuilt herself, she allowed herself to dream again. The future was still a mystery, but now, instead of feeling lost, Ellie felt hopeful. The transformation she had undergone was a testament to her strength, and finally, she recognized that she was ready to embrace life with an open heart. Ellie was about to face the hardest challenge of her life. Reuniting with her mother had been an important step, but now she found herself at a crossroads. The weight of guilt and anger still hung over her, and the pressure of expectations from both her family and herself left her feeling restless. She knew she needed to deal with it, but she didn't know how. Ellie's decision to open up to her mother had been an act of courage, but now it felt like the past was about to repeat itself. The pressure to be perfect, to not fail, was overwhelming. Sitting in her room, surrounded by her journals, she felt paralyzed. The sense of helplessness consumed her. What if all her progress was in vain? What if, by confronting her mother again, she only reopened old wounds? On a sunny morning, Ellie decided she could no longer postpone the conversation she needed to have. She had learned to accept her emotions, and now it was time to apply that lesson. With her heart racing, she picked up the phone and called Ethan. His voice calmed her. He encouraged her to express what she felt, to be honest about her insecurities. "You're not alone, Ellie. Remember that you're stronger than you think," Ethan said, and those words resonated deeply. With newfound determination, Ellie headed to her mother's house. The journey felt longer than usual, and each step brought her closer to uncertainty. When she reached the door, she hesitated. The fear of what was to come briefly paralyzed her. However, thinking of the conversations she had with Ethan, she took a deep breath and knocked. When her mother opened the door, the atmosphere was charged with emotions. The silence was broken by a timid "hi," and they faced each other, filled with unspoken memories. Ellie felt a knot in her stomach, but she decided she couldn't remain silent. "We need to talk," she said, her voice firm, yet trembling. Her mother nodded, and they sat together in the living room. The words came slowly, but Ellie began to describe how she felt about the past. She spoke of pain and anger, but also of hope. With each sentence, the tension in the air seemed to ease a little. Her mother, visibly moved, listened attentively, and this gave Ellie a new boost. "I didn't want you to feel this way," her mother finally said, tears in her eyes. I was so lost in my own pain that I didn't realize how you were suffering." Ellie felt a mix of relief and sadness. Her mother's words acknowledged what she had faced, but they also revealed the complexity of the pain they both carried. The dialogue deepened. Ellie began to understand that her mother, just like her, struggled with her own insecurities. Her mother's failures and frustrations were not excuses for what had happened, but part of a broader story. Instead of seeing her mother solely as the cause of her pain, Ellie started to see her as a vulnerable woman seeking understanding and forgiveness. "I don't want this to separate us anymore," Ellie said, her voice full of sincerity. "I want us to rebuild our relationship. I want you to know that I'm willing to forgive." Those words were like a balm for both of them. The tension that had long kept them apart began to dissipate, like mist in the dawn. The conversation continued, and Ellie realized that by opening her heart, she was not only releasing the pain but also making space for healing. They laughed, cried, and for the first time in a long time, felt connected. The weight Ellie carried felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from her shoulders. At the end of the meeting, Ellie felt renewed. What had once been a labyrinth of pain was now transforming into a path of reconciliation. She knew there were no guarantees that everything would be perfect, but there was a feeling of hope. Her friendships with Ethan and Lucas became even stronger as they stood by her during this journey of self-discovery. Ellie realized that life was full of new beginnings, and that even after failures, there would always be a chance to rise and try again. She had learned that true strength was not in avoiding pain, but in facing it and transforming that experience into learning. Looking ahead, she felt ready to embrace whatever life brought her, with an open heart and a new perspective on love and forgiveness. Ellie left her mother's house with a lighter heart. The sun shone brightly in the sky, and the gentle breeze seemed to carry with it a new beginning. As she walked, she allowed herself to reflect on the conversation she had just had. Her mother's words still echoed in her mind. "I didn't realize how much you were suffering." The revelation touched her deeply. Ellie had never considered that her mother's pain could also be a heavy burden. When she got home, Ellie decided she needed to share what had happened with Ethan. He had been her anchor throughout this process, and now more than ever, she wanted him to know about the transformation taking place within her. She picked up her phone and sent a message. "I talked to my mom. It was hard, but I think we're on the right track." Within seconds, her phone vibrated with a response. "That's amazing, Ellie. I'm so proud of you. Do you want me to come over tonight to talk?" Ellie smiled as she read his words. The idea of having Ethan close made her excited. It was comforting to know that he was so present in her life. Later, when Ethan arrived, Ellie was anxious but also filled with anticipation. As soon as he walked in, she began to share everything about the conversation, every emotion, every revelation. Ethan listened attentively, and she felt that her words were received with love and understanding. "You were very brave, Ellie. Dealing with these things isn't easy. And seeing your mom in a new light is a big step," Ethan said, admiring her strength. Ellie felt warmed by his words. It was nice to have someone who believed in her, who supported her without judgment. Over time, Ellie noticed that her relationship with her mother began to change. They talked more often, exchanged messages, and even started meeting for lunch. With each meeting, Ellie felt that the wounds of the past were slowly healing. She remembered the difficult conversations she had with Ethan about her fears, and now, as she saw them dissipating, a smile formed on her face. One afternoon, while she was with her mother at a cafe, Ellie decided to ask a question that had been on her mind. "Mom, how did you feel when I was younger? What did you think about me?" The question made her mother hesitate, but soon she responded, with a distant look. "I felt lost, Ellie. I didn't know how to deal with the pain I carried. I wanted to be the perfect mother, but often I failed." This moment of vulnerability brought a new understanding between them. Ellie realized that, although there had been hurt, there was also a bridge being built. Every tear shared, every laugh contributed to the healing of their relationship. Meanwhile, Her friendship with Lucas also blossomed. He had always been a quiet support, but now he was starting to open up more. Conversations about dreams, fears, and even plans for the future became more frequent. Ellie felt grateful to have friends who helped her see the beauty in life, even in the face of challenges. On a quiet evening, Ellie and Ethan were sitting on the couch, discussing their plans for the future. She shared her idea of starting a gratitude journal, a way to record the small victories of daily life. This could help us focus on the positive, right? She said excitedly. Ethan smiled. Absolutely. It's a great way to remember that, even in difficulties, there's always something to be thankful for. In that moment, Ellie realized how much she had changed. The weight of guilt and anger that had accompanied her for so long was dissipating. She felt stronger and more confident. Life still had its ups and downs, but now she was willing to face everything with her head held high. In the end, Ellie learned that the journey of healing is continuous. Reuniting with her mother was not the end, but a new beginning. She knew challenges would still arise, but she was ready to face them, no longer alone, but surrounded by the people who loved her. And above all, Ellie learned that forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself, and she was finally allowing herself to be free. Ellie sat at the kitchen table, looking out the window as the sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees. She thought about how her life had changed in recent months. Conversations with her mother, which had once been filled with distance and misunderstandings, were now moments of connection and vulnerability. The pain that had once felt unbearable had transformed into a space for mutual understanding. Ellie realized that forgiveness was not just an act of generosity towards her mother, but a way to free herself. Over time, their interactions became lighter, filled with laughter and shared stories. They became friends, something Ellie had never imagined was possible. Each lunch they shared brought new memories and a sense of belonging. With each encounter, Ellie felt that the scars of the past became less painful, paving the way for a future full of hope. Ethan, always by her side, also benefited from this transformation. Ellie noticed that his strength had helped shape her courage. Deep conversations and moments of mutual support brought them even closer. He encouraged her to open up about her fears, and now, together, they dreamed about what the future could bring. Their friendship deepened, and the connection they shared was a true foundation. Ellie's friendship with Lucas also blossomed. He became not just a friend, but a confidant. Conversations about their ambitions and dreams brought them closer together. Ellie realized that life could be light, filled with laughter and discoveries, even in the face of difficulties. The presence of true friends helped her see the beauty in the little things, and together, they learned to celebrate every victory, no matter how small. With each passing day, Ellie felt freer. She had learned that healing was not a destination, but a journey. The wounds of the past still existed, but now they were just part of her story, not its conclusion. The gratitude journal she had started keeping became a daily habit. In it, she wrote down not only the good things but also the lessons life taught her. It was a constant reminder that, even on difficult days, there was always something to be grateful for. As Ellie walked through the park on a sunny day, she stopped to watch the children playing and families laughing. A smile formed on her face as she realized how much she had changed. The weight of guilt and sadness had been replaced by lightness and gratitude. Ellie had learned to forgive herself, to understand that love and understanding were more powerful than pain and anger. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but she also knew she was not alone. With her mother, Ethan, and Lucas by her side, Ellie was ready to face whatever came her way. The transformation she experienced was not just about healing relationships, but about rediscovering herself and accepting that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. Life is a journey of learning and growth. Ellie encouraged everyone to reflect on their own experiences. What challenges have you faced, and how have they shaped who you are today? Share your stories in the comments, and remember that connection and mutual support are essential in our journeys. Each interaction helps create a safe space for us to learn and grow together. Like and subscribe for more stories that inspire transformation and overcoming adversity. It's time to take action and celebrate the small victories of life. Thank you so much for watching. What moment in this story moved you the most? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. I'd love to know what touched your heart or left you speechless. Your reflections are so valuable, helping us bring more emotionally impactful stories about the value of family, true human connections, and life's unexpected lessons. And if this story resonated with you, please share it with others who would appreciate a moment of reflection or a powerful, unexpected twist. Together, we can spread these inspiring moments that capture the essence of life and emotion. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're looking forward to more heartwarming narratives like this one. And, of course, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I look forward to reading your thoughts. Until our next inspiring story.